Well, good afternoon again, everybody, and welcome to another of our podcasts, our Streamcast. It's the Forget Me Not Village Streamcast, and I'm your host, Brian Prowitz, joined as always by the founder and genius behind the Forget Me Not Village, which is in the process of fundraising and construction here in Roseburg, Oregon. And Pam, it's good to see you again. You ready for another conversation?
Oh, yeah. It's April Fool's Day, right? Yeah.
Apparently. Have you had anybody play any jokes on you today?
Just this one.
Okay. All right. Hey, you knew this joke was coming.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we have a guest today that we're going to be talking to in just a few minutes. But before we do that, I just wanted to kind of get a quick snapshot for you on sort of an update from the last conversation that we've had and what things have been happening in your world around Forget Me Not Village and dementia and other kinds of care that you're involved in here in the last couple of weeks since we last talked.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited because the Parkinson's Association and the Michael J. Fox Association asked me to represent them in a forum on top of Capitol Hill. So last week I spent 3 days getting prepped to do the job. And then the day where we actually went in and met with the senators and the representatives in Washington, D.C., talking about Parkinson's and the funding that we need to have. It's only been $16 million for many years, and it actually needs to go up to $25 million. You know, the more I learn, I mean, I do a Parkinson's support group, and some of the stories that people told, and that's basically what we did. We explained our stories and why we feel additional money needs to happen. It's just heart-wrenching because Parkinson's, they're affecting people 40 and younger. And it's like, my goodness, it affects their families, it affects their livelihood. I mean, it was just heart-wrenching to listen to what happens to that horrible disease. And I do a support group for Parkinson's. And it's just guys, believe it or not. So we have a good time. We learned this week, we learned about the brain stimulation surgery that they do for Parkinson's, for the tremors. And I'll tell you, all this information is so eye-opening to me as to how much our diet affects us, our lifestyle, our stress, everything that affects us, what it can actually do to us in the long term is really mind-boggling. You know, one of the questions that my Parkinson's people said is, well, can't we get a cure? And I said, well, unfortunately, damage has already been done because they don't actually diagnose it for well over 10 to 20 years after the disease has begun. I mean, that's huge. We're talking about young people here that have no clue what's in their future. And it's really pretty sad. So I was very proud that they actually invited me to represent them on Capitol Hill. So yeah, good connections in the whole 9 yards. I thought it was very good information we gathered, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with that.
Well, there's some big names there, obviously, and so congratulations on that. I wanted to remind people that are watching on Facebook or YouTube that we can see your comments. So if you have a question for Pam or for our guest coming up here in just a moment, you can just leave those in the normal places you would if you were commenting on this feed one way or the other. We'll see those. And if you ask a question that we can answer or that you would like answered, we'll make sure that Pam sees it or possibly Donna sees it as well and get that answered. So the topic today, though, we started off quite lighthearted, is hospice and hospice care, Pam. And before we introduce our guest, I wanted to touch base with you on the importance, the value, the role, the way hospice plays into caring for your dementia, your loved one with dementia, what it meant to you, and then what you want to say about Donna as we continue that topic today on the program.
I, like everybody else, believed that hospice was not a good thing, that it was something that you just do just before you die. And, this whole podcast is to give you more arrows in your quiver. By that, I mean, the more knowledge, the more information you have about the disease and what you can do about it, the better you are. This arrow is really, really, really super important, mostly because of the things that I learned through going through the final stages with Rich, what to expect, what to look for. But the biggest thing I took away from that, and this is where hospice is so important, is the guilt as a caregiver for feeling guilty for your spouse dying. By that, I mean, they pass away, and if you've been the caregiver, you wonder, well, if I had just fed him a little more, if I had just given him a little more liquid, if he hadn't fallen, or all the things you can think of that you're going to bring guilt onto yourself that's going to say, well, what I'm doing is just going to kill him, or what I'm doing is not going to kill him. And what I learned is that when the body is ready to go, it doesn't care what you do or how much you feed him, it's ready to go. And I learned that from hospice. They showed me all the steps that happened, what to look for. So when Rich passed away, it was a very, very natural occurrence. It was just, it made that process make me feel so much better with my decision. So as I said before, this is just more knowledge that people need to complete the care, because you don't want to go through the rest of your life thinking he wouldn't have died if he'd eaten one more meal, or he wouldn't have died if he'd given more liquid. It doesn't work that way. And Donna, I have known, she has been a dear friend of mine for so many years, and I have to credit her for helping me think about hospice and including hospice in Rich's care when the time came. But I'm more interested in having her explain what hospice can do when we need it, how it works, and the whole 9 yards, because she's right there. She's working in action. Very, very valuable.
In fact, she's in the field right now, and so she's going to join us on the phone for the conversation today. So Donna, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Donna Russell, and I am the hospice liaison for a local company here in Roseburg called Medicine Hospice. And I got into this arena about 15 years ago, and I've loved every day that I have been able to be here. My time is getting short with hospice now, and I'm looking at retirement in the next month here. But I wouldn't trade one day ever. I would never change my mind. I was never sorry that I got into this line of care. And it's so rewarding. And people always say, oh, you're angels, you're this and you're that. But really, people who do hospice care do it because it's in our hearts. And it's more like a mission than a job. It's really so much more than that, because it's so intimate with families and the patients. So, it's a crash course kind of like in intimacy, because when people get hospice, they usually come on late, and that's the most crucial error that could ever be made, because when people hear the word hospice, they equate that naturally with death, and I'm going to die as soon as I sign up for hospice. And that is so far from the truth that we struggle to get that word out. But the fact remains that at some point in our lives, we'll all be faced with how to handle a life-limiting illness. And I hope to be able to impart some information today and some resources that can assist people and their loved ones in making an informed decision about end-of-life care.
Yeah, and we look forward to that. I would love for you and Pam to sort of have a little conversation along these lines, maybe touching on some of what Pam just said. But Pam, where would you kind of like to start with Donna here?
I would like to have her answer, when do you look for hospice? When is that, a time when you need to consider bringing hospice in? Is there some general rule of thumb or something that you can give us so that people will know when that time has happened?
Well, a decision should be made about choosing hospice, and it's very appropriate to discuss someone's healthcare options, including hospice, really at any time. But the best time to discuss it is before an illness strikes. So education is key. If you are not comfortable in discussing that with a loved one, it's best probably then to go into the physician's office and bring the subject up then and start having that discussion with the doctor. People get upset when they get, let's say, a cancer diagnosis, for example, and people right then, when they get that diagnosis, and the doctor is explaining to them the disease process of where they are, at that moment, hospice should be introduced as well as an alternative, because you may not do all the cancer, or you may recover from your cancer. But the option to hear about hospice and know that in the future, if it's needed, it's better to be prepared and know what's coming and what options you do have. So it's, in my opinion, never too early to discuss hospice. And many people, I think, don't realize that what actually terminal conditions are. I've talked to so many people who didn't know dementia was a terminal diagnosis.
Wow.
Perhaps COPD was a terminal diagnosis. They're surprised at that. Or even Parkinson's. So there's so much education to be done. But in a nutshell, the answer to when should people be introduced to hospice is, in my opinion, whenever that terminal diagnosis is made.
Wow. Okay, so as soon as they know, and that's really pretty, that's great. That's great information, because I certainly didn't know that. You know, we went a long way, well, almost all the way through the disease before I contacted you guys. And it sure would have been nice to have been able to have a little help earlier on, because I didn't know that's the way the game went. So that's awesome information for them just to call hospice and find out exactly when. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Even if you're in the midst of pursuing curative treatment, it's always good to know that if that cure doesn't happen, that you do have options. So the more information you have at the forefront, the better you are prepared to handle what comes down the road.
Now that is so good. I had no idea that you could do that. I thought that when you called them, that's the day you need them, not, you know, something in the future that you can prepare for. Awesome. So, okay, so you get that information, and the next question is, how does it get paid for? How do you get paid for the services of hospice?
So back in the 1980s, Congress voted right into the Medicare bill, the hospice bill. And so that means if you're anyone who has Medicare and has a terminal diagnosis is eligible for hospice at that moment. Other insurances like Blue Cross, Humana, Pacific Source normally follow Medicare's rules for hospice. So it really depends on if you have a private insurance. You may have an 80-20 or deductible situation, but if you're on Medicare, Medicare covers hospice 100%. So there are never any bills that go to the patient or the family. And most insurances follow that same route, including Medicaid.
Wow. That's really good to know that you can use those services without having to pay a whopping bill for it. How do you determine how often you come to see the patient or see the families? How do you determine that?
Sure. That's determined by the patient's condition. So we have many hospice patients who are, what you might think would be considered well, because they take plane trips to Hawaii. I've sent people all over the country on hospice because they're still able to travel. And I think that's where people get confused, because they think, well, if I'm on hospice, I have to be at home, lying in bed, dying. That's not our focus at all. Our focus is quality of life. And so we want to keep each and every hospice patient, we want to keep their symptoms controlled and have them feeling the best that they can for as long as they can. So I think that's the clincher of hospice in a nutshell. We want you to be as normal as you can be for as many months as you have left. And so, that's why people equate hospice with death, is because they always come on so late. For instance, we have made improvements overall in the United States with hospice care in general. Back in, let's just go back 10 years from now. Only about 33% nationwide of people who were eligible for hospice were even using the benefit. Wow. And half of that 33% only got hospice care for a week or less. So now, go forward to 2021, now we're at about 52% of people in the nation accessing hospice as a good, viable option. And of the 52%, about more than half of those have hospice now for 30 days or longer. So we're improving the curve with hospice care and getting patients on longer, but still we're sorely lacking, and so many people are not getting the benefit of hospice.
Yeah, I was even hesitant when I first called, because to my mind, he wasn't close to passing. And I think initially you guys came out like once a week just to check on me and check on him and make sure everything was okay. And then as things began to progress, as you began to notice that the body was beginning to shut down, then you start coming more and more. And then finally, when it was obvious that, because with Lewy body, you're still up running around. I mean, it's not like you're laying in bed in a fetal position. You're up moving. He was up moving within hours of his passing away. So it's like,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, like, there was no definite time where, okay, he's going to die and blah, blah, blah. It was within hours after you guys came, when I finally called, when you explained about him throwing up and this kind of stuff, that I finally called you, and you were right there. I mean, you were by my side constantly, and I really appreciated all of that. And I really appreciated the heads up of your telling me what signs and signals to look for, and then what actually happens. On the other side of that was that if he's in hospice and they pass away, it's very clean. He's just passed away and he's gone. But if he would pass away at home without hospice care, it is my understanding that they take him to the hospital and do an autopsy to find why he died. Is that true?
In some cases, they do that with an unattended death, and that's what a death at home is called without hospice, is an unattended death. And so the police have to be called, and the coroner, and sometimes an autopsy will be performed, but it's not every time.
Not every time.
But when that time happens, if you have hospice, none of that situation happens.
Right, and that
food and very calm. The nurse comes and she'll pronounce the patient, and then she will prepare the body, wash it, take anything out that shouldn't be in there. We present the body to the loved ones, and then they can spend time with their loved ones.
Yeah. Some
people like to do that. Some people like to have the funeral home come right away, but it's nice because you can create that space with candles and music and aromatherapy, and you can do all kinds of things. I just had a patient pass last week, and it was really very sweet the way the family was all. Everybody was in his bed. There were 6 people in his bed, and they sat vigil for a couple of days like that with their father and their husband. Um, and it was a great time. They played his favorite music, and they put on football games that he loved. And, you know, it was a really, if you can accept this term, it was really a fantastic, sweet death. And it was peaceful, and that's as it should be.
Yeah, that's what I found.
I know I went off track with your question about how often does the nurse come, and that's really based on what the family and the patient want and need. How much attention do they need? And we're willing to come once a day if that's necessary. Certainly, when a patient transitions into what we call the active dying stage, hospice will be coming every day. But before that, when the patient is still active or doesn't have a lot of symptoms to be managed, the family and the nurse will make a plan. Maybe the nurse comes once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, just depending on the acuity of the patient. All subject to change. Another question people have is, can I keep my personal doctor? And the answer is yes, you can. Many doctors prefer to keep track of their own patients and work their care. Other patients prefer to have one of the hospice medical directors take over their case. So they have choices about who provides their care for them.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So there are all hospices services the same, like one company from another. Like I know I know have relationships with a lot of the staff there. I know how passionate they are, but there's also other hospice in town. Do they have the exact same services and all this other kind of good stuff?
Yes, CMS does require all hospices to offer the same services. However, some hospices, like in your bigger metropolitan areas, where there's a lot more money for actual hospice houses, where patients can go to live in a hospice house and have 24-hour care, a lot of times they'll have extra services like massage, pet therapy, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, aromatherapy, music, all of those kind of things come into light with a bigger area. So here in Roseburg, we provide skilled nursing service, staff aides, spiritual advisors, social work advisors to help with end-of-life planning, funeral arrangements, insurance issues, those kinds of things.
Wow.
Or just plain grieving. You know, we're big on our grief classes because everybody starts grieving at a different time and place. So those 4 disciplines are in every hospice, and then in your bigger hospices or better funded hospices, you can even have extended services like those I just mentioned.
Wow. You guys do an awful lot for sure. For sure. You know, that's amazing. So, any other grains of information I might have forgotten, Donna, that I should cover?
Some people wonder, you know, if let's say they're a single person and they live their lives by themselves, they may ask, does someone have to be with the patient at all times? As long as a patient can care for themselves and still complete their activities of daily living by themselves, you could be on hospice.
Wow.
When a person starts to need help, though, just with bathing or feeding or, you know, the activities of daily living that we all take for granted, that's when social work would enter in, and then we'll talk to the patient either about hiring caregivers or perhaps going into an assisted living situation where they can get more of the 24-hour help they need.
So does all this, can you talk to them actually before they talk to their doctor, or does doctor come first and doctor says you need hospice? How does that work? And yeah, how does that work?
Well, we get a lot of self-referrals to hospice. People will just call us up and say, you know, I'm struggling here. I'm caring for my loved one. I'm wondering if hospice is appropriate. So we do not need a doctor's order to go out and do an evaluation on your loved one or yourself. Hospice will make an appointment with you, come right out. We'll do an evaluation. And if you are eligible at that time for services, then we can approach the doctor, get the doctor's order, and just make hospice happen.
Wow.
It's a very simple process. So it goes both ways. We get referrals from doctors, from care homes, from personal, public people just calling in for information and help. So the referral process is quite simple. We can take care of it for you, or you can approach your doctor. Either way.
Wow. Well, that's awesome, Donna. I'm so glad that you could, get on the phone and talk to us, because you've got some really, really, really important information, and everybody needs to know. So, calls will come in, and I know how to answer the questions now and who to direct to and the whole yard. So I truly appreciate it, Donna. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been my pleasure. And I know that, it's a scary subject, and the word does scare people sometimes, but know that each of us is going to face that at some point. And it's better to be prepared and have information in your hand. So when that time comes, when you begin to struggle and become tired and you don't know where to turn, please call hospice.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so very much. I really, really appreciate you. So,
it's my pleasure. We appreciate you. Pam, you're doing such great work. I mean, going to Capitol Hill, having the Parkinson's Association reach out to you, not only is that so flattering, but it's so needed. We need advocates for our elderly population. So many people are alone and struggling, and we need advocates like you. And so we can't thank you enough for everything you're doing.
I'm certainly trying, that's for sure. But people having relationships, like yours, and the support that you guys gave, and Ruthie, I got to throw a pitch in for Ruthie. I mean, you're just the best of the best. You're the cream of the crop, and I'm privileged to know you, for sure. For sure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And for us, it's really about caring then also for the people who are left behind.
Yeah.
And so hospice will always visit. We try to stay connected with the families for at least a year after their loved ones pass, simply because everyone grieves differently. And you may think you're fine, and 6 months down the road, wow, it really hits you. And you need somebody to talk to and have somebody there to support you, and hospice will always be there.
Cool. All right, Donna. Well, we're going to let you go. I think we're out of time. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me.
You bet. Thanks, Donna.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you go. Donna Russell from Amedisys. Takeaways for me on that, Pam, are that it's better to be prepared, like she said, better to have information. And you can call hospice even early on. It doesn't have to be the day you feel overwhelmed or the day it occurs to you that your loved one might be dying. I imagine there are 1,000 things that go into that moment, though, and how difficult it would be to make that phone call. And you described that a little bit. Yeah,
for sure. And then when she said you can call it on yourself, I didn't even thought of that one. It's like, wow, something that simple. I never thought that, if you've got terminal illness, hey, really, really some really good information. Really, I'm pleased with what she spoke about. So I hope we have a lot of questions and people call me or call them and, get your answers, but use them. It's a resource and it's absolutely amazing. for sure.
Yeah, we have a couple of minutes here. If you do have a question, please enter it into the comments, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. And it doesn't have to be about hospice either. If you have questions about dementia care or any of the Alzheimer's or any other kind of traumatic brain injury treatment that that you may have experience with. Pam, while we wait a couple of minutes to see if anybody has a question, what is coming up for you in the next couple of weeks here between now and the next time we talk?
I am so excited about the next guest that's going to be here in 2 weeks. His name is Dr. James Wright, and he is actually an attending physician for 3 care homes over in Richmond, Virginia. And his care homes over there were hit especially hard with COVID. And he's going to talk a little bit about, him losing 56 patients in the first 3 weeks of COVID. And what the doctor's role is in nursing home care. He is also bringing to the United States a village very much like Amsterdam's Hoogway, I think it's pronounced. And he's developing a 28-acre site over there in Richmond. And from our conversations, it looks like we're going to be partnering, and I'm going to be building a village over there with him. And perhaps he's going to come over here and help us with a village here, something much bigger than what we've already got going. It's just absolutely mind-boggling what's been happening in the last couple of weeks. The founders of Glenner Village, which is the first village like mine, only it's different. So, I mean, people come in for adult daycare and they go to the different shops and that type of stuff. He has agreed to be on my advisory board, and his name is Steve Tarde. And that is really exciting because now you've got more expertise, because he can see the value of what we're doing and how important it is between the spousal home and the interactive home for our rural areas. So, gee, so much is going on. I just, every day is like a whirlwind.
Yeah. And I'm always excited to get an update from you on how things are going, because it seems like there's always something significant that's happening. And this is the time right now. If you're watching this, it doesn't really matter where you are in the United States. This is the moment for support to come in for Forget Me Not Village. This is the moment for people to volunteer, donate, just learn more about what's happening for a couple of reasons. One of them is that, as you say all the time, Pam, you don't know which one of you out there is going to need this home. And so you might thank your future self for any kind of investment that you make in making the Forget Me Not Village happen. The other, though, is just to build on the momentum that you've created, Pam, in order to have support for this project. You've got, how big is the property in Roseburg that's been donated? How many acres is that?
Tom's donated 2, and he's willing to donate a total of 5 if we need it.
So land has been donated. The blueprints are made. The layout basically is there right in front of Pam and Forget Me Not Village and the board. And it's this time right now where that extra funding, that extra donation, that extra help could be the turning point, the pivot point, if you will. Every project has a tipping point. And you're sitting there on that fulcrum and you just never know when. And for Pam, she's been adding and we just got to get that one more just little tilt that could potentially tilt this project actually into action. We want to see action on the ground soon. And you've done incredible work, Pam. It seems like the people are there, the concept is there, the vision is there, and people are accepting it, people with expertise in this field. And now it's the part where you say, who's going to step up financially and see this thing through? And that's right about where we're at, I think.
Yeah, I agree. That's the part, because it's going to take a village to take care of just one dementia person. So I think in the networking, working together, for basically cultural and social change, we need to change the way we take care of people with dementia, Parkinson's, and brain injury, and we have to do that because as a country we cannot keep up with the money that we're having to pay for that care. And if we can change it and give people dignity of life for the rest of their lives and their families, and a a very easy passage to a very, very bad disease, we need to do that. And with that is a network of people that are in the industry that understand it's got to happen. And it's got to happen before it happens to you, because, once it happens to you, it's too late. So, yeah.
You can get the entire Forget Me Not Village story at forgetmenotVillage.org. This week, Pam and I were talking about a store with some swag in it that you may be seeing something about. Maybe get yourself a mug or a t-shirt or a hat. That'll be coming online hopefully in the next month or 2 or 3. Anyway, very soon, for sure. Yeah. And we have a comment from one of our mutual friends. I thought I'd throw up here. Jim Little.
Jim Little, yeah.
Jim and Carmen.
Yes.
Yep. And as he said, there have been some plans to have Zoom or telegreeting for hospice volunteers. They're still very much dealing with COVID there at the VA hospice. But yeah, a lot of people out there in the community with personal experience with dementia. And thanks for watching, Jim. We appreciate you very, very much. I haven't seen Jim in a while. I should go find him, and we should go to lunch.
Yeah, we should. All of us.
That'd be fantastic. Awesome. 6 feet apart, of course.
Of course.
Well, Pam, what are some of your final thoughts for today's program, other than the incredible introduction of Dr. Wright? Next time we get together on the first and third Thursdays of each month here on the Forget Me Not Village Streamcast. And we love your comments. And we love to know that you've shared these podcasts, Streamcasts with other people that might benefit from knowing some of the information that we share here. Pam's got an amazing network, and we love showing it off here on the Streamcast.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's a work in process. Let's put it that way. So, yeah, next week I've got more conferences. It's Evolve is the name of the conference, where it's a collection of other care homes that realize there need to be changes. So they're taking all ideas and thoughts and throwing in this huge mixer to try and come out with some changes that need to be done in our system. So it's going to be an important conference for the next 2 weeks. So that's going to keep me a little busy.
Yeah. As if you're not busy enough already. You can contact Pam, as you can see on the screen, at pam@forgetmenotVillage.org. Well, Pam, I think that's a wrap for today's program. Thank you to Donna Russell, Medicis Hospice Liaison. I didn't get a chance to ask her exactly what she is doing out there in the field. It sounds like that's what she does. She's always on the move. And so while, hopefully everybody heard okay, it was a little bit hard maybe to hear with the phone, but we were happy to have her and get her expertise there. So hopefully people can watch this again and pick up some more details and go to the Medicis website as well, and maybe even reach out to Donna if you had questions, or you could do that through Pam as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, my friend. Well, I guess we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. I hope you get out and enjoy the nice weather. And
for sure. Can't wait.
Keep knocking down wins out there, my friend.
I will. You have a good weekend.
All right.
All right.
Pam Spetta, Forget Me Not Village. We'll see you on the Streamcast again in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Bye.